So there's a way you can get involved, which doesn't cost a lot and it doesn't need you to speak out. But, I would encourage people. We need to get back to what's right and restore our nation. And that needs people to speak out and take a risk.
David Curtin, it's such a joy to talk to you. Now, I've spoken to the Scottish Family Party, I've spoken to Christian People's Alliance, two other parties who support man-woman marriage publicly, openly, vocally. And that's quite rare. But you are the leader of another party, the Heritage Party. And in the last election, marriage between a man and a woman was one of your calling cards, something that you support uniquely. And so I wanted to talk to you as well. So we'll get into that. But before we go that direction, perhaps you could say hi to our viewers and our listeners.
Yeah, hello everybody. It's lovely to join you, Tony, on your podcast.
For anybody joining that doesn't know us, we're the UK's largest pro-marriage organisation, representing tens of thousands of individuals and groups who support this thing, man-woman marriage. And we're not saying other things don't exist in a liberal democracy. Of course they can. You can just look around and see them, David, can't you? But what we're saying is that man-woman marriage is unique. It's special. It brings something to the table that nothing else can bring, evidently, obviously. And all the academic literature seems to say that it brings about the best version of the next generation. It brings advantages that nothing else compares to. And so we think it should be championed, and it should be spoken of more vocally than it is. And that's why it's lovely to talk to organisations like yours, parties like yours. We don't take a political stance, left or right, middle, anything else like that. We just look at marriage and its advantages. And so, David, it's a real joy to welcome you. So give us a bit of background. Why the Heritage Party? Why you? Why not just link in with something else that's going on?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you about my background if you like. I mean, I was a teacher for a very long time, for about 20 years, but then I got actively involved in politics about 10 years ago now, so 2014 or so. And I joined UKIP back in the day because I was concerned about the European Union, and that was the big issue of the day 10 years ago. And I was also concerned about political correctness, and that seemed to be the only party that was on the right side of both of those things, wanting to regain our national sovereignty and also standing up against this political correctness. I mean, it's more correctly called cultural Marxism, if you like, and what's now today called wokery or wokeness, but it's a big problem because it militates against free speech, and the free speech which is being cancelled progressively seems to be free speech from conservatives or Christians or people with traditional viewpoints. It's not people who are advocating for degeneracy or perversion that are getting cancelled. They have the free speech to do whatever they want, but people with opinions like you and me are progressively finding that we can't get platforms at universities. That was the issue 10 years ago. Now people are being thrown out of their jobs and even getting visits from the police for having the wrong opinions on traditional values. And so, as time has gone on since I've been in politics, that's become more and more of an issue and more something we need to stand up against and say, no, we need to advocate for our free speech for all opinions. So I've stayed in politics. I was on the London Assembly for 5 years. I was elected in 2016 and unfortunately didn't get back in 2021, but I had a lot of time to question the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, over those 5 years. But during that time, the party I was in, UKIP, won the referendum, whatever you think about that, in 2016, but then fell apart, so it really was not doing much after that. Its job was done, and, it's sort of disintegrated. So I went independent for a small amount of time, and then I started the Heritage Party because I thought we need a socially conservative party in the UK because there isn't one, but really to stand up for traditional values. And we had 41 candidates in the last general election in July 2024, and I asked all of my candidates to support three things, which are there are two sexes, there are not 69 genders, marriage is a man and a woman, and we are a pro-life party. We're anti-abortion. So those are our socially conservative principles. So, the thing that you represent is one of our core principles.
And the sort of things which, up until, just 5 minutes ago, most people would have ascribed to.
Right.
Marriage is a man and a woman, and there are only two sexes. It's not rocket science, is it really?
Exactly. I mean, 30 or 40 years ago, these things would just be taken
Yeah,
for granted and
yeah.
assumed. No one would even question it. I mean, the thing
Mm.
we're talking about now, the conversation we're having now, if we had this conversation 30 years ago, people would be saying, why are you even talking about that? Of
What's
course,
going?
marriage is a
Yeah,
man and a
exact.
woman.
Absolutely right. So I understand why you're doing what you're doing in that case. So last election, let's have a little look at that. How did you guys get on? Very early days for you and your party. 41 candidates nationwide. Was that Scotland and Northern Ireland and Wales as well, or just England?
It was mostly England. I think we had 33 candidates in England or 34, six in Wales, one in Scotland. We
Right.
didn't have anyone in Northern Ireland this time, unfortunately. But it's early days for us yet. It's our first general election, and it's expensive to stand in general elections because every candidate has to find a £500 deposit. So even with our 40 candidates, 41 candidates, that's over £20,000 of deposits, and then you've got more to spend on campaigning and leafleting and so on. And we don't have huge amounts of money. We are funded entirely by our members and people giving us small donations. I'm grateful for everything we have.
Let's get in there straight away. We'll put up on the screen your party's website address so people can go to that. And I imagine if they want to find out more or get involved, they can then do that via that link. So what is tell us, where's the best place to go for that kind of information?
So our website is heritageparty.org, quite simply. So look on there and you can read our manifesto there and you can join there as well if you want to become a member.
Great, that's good to know. Now, I saw some interviews that you were involved with, and I have to say, I thought some people, I mentioned to you before, there was an Ian Dale interview when it was almost like you were being treated as a subspecies, seriously, as if somebody who didn't deserve to be involved in the political process
It was
in reasonable debate.
awful.
It was awful.
I've never been treated so rudely as I have, and I have had some very rude,
Yeah, I'm sure you
nasty,
have.
but this was even worse because he wouldn't listen to me when I started saying. He asked me a question. So, would you get rid of same-sex adoption? I said yes, I would, and this is why. And he's like, "Well, I'm going to cut you off. I'm going to throw you out of the room." He was really, really rude. He didn't. He asked a question and didn't want me to answer because I didn't give the right answer that he wanted, and I didn't agree with him. But what you didn't see in that interview is immediately after it ended. So immediately the camera cut. Normally the interviewers would go, shake your hands or whatever. He turned straight to me and he said, "You're just a bigot, aren't you?" Really
Wow,
swore at me.
wow,
And he
wow.
was so visceral, so
Yeah,
raging,
yeah,
in
yeah.
how he said to me. Even the other people on the panel were shocked
Mm.
because he was so rude.
So that the person who refuses to countenance your opinion calls you a bigot.
Yeah.
A little bit ironic, isn't it, really?
And then he said to me, "Well, you're not coming on here again." So obviously, he said it straight out. He said, "No, yeah, you're a bigot. You're not coming on my show again," essentially. But it wasn't nice. It was really spiteful and angry, had the way he said it. So that was, people who say that they support free speech, it just shows you that they don't. So he invited me on because of the number of candidates we had, but
Mm,
then said, at the end, "Well, I'm not inviting you back ever. You're
mm,
done."
mm,
So because I just support traditional family values,
mm,
which is extraordinary. This is what we're up against. The whole establishment is really against Christian opinion, traditional opinion. So this is why I'm started the Heritage Party and why I'm in it, because we need to fight for this. And if we don't get involved and fight for what's right and what's normal, these people are just going to, be able to run riot and trash our culture and trash our society. And I'm not willing to let that happen without a fight.
and that's good. And I don't know about you guys. I mean, we would come at similar things from a very similar position, but on an evidence base. That the evidence is quite clear. Marriage ensures not that every couple has a child, but that every child has a mother and a father, because it's important. Because the evidence really does show that that's the best way to grow up, with your biological mum and dad. We know sometimes that's impossible, but ideally that, or something which is harking towards that, and that again, the evidence around children growing up with different family types is very, very clear, and the outcomes are best with your biological mum and dad, if not another male and female, and then single parents and other types of relationships fall behind in terms of mental health outcomes and all sorts of other stats. And in fact, we crossed paths at a conference last week where information like that was being discussed. It's not, and so for somebody to discount your opinion because actually you're saying, well, hold on, why don't we look at it from the child's perspective? So children's needs instead of adults' desires, why don't we try putting them first for a while? Well, surely that's a good thing to say, not a bad thing.
Absolutely. You can look at it in terms of it's just the natural order of things. That's the way it is. In traditional terms, that's the way it's always been until a few decades ago when academics started proposing something different and saying, oh, there's all different types of families and they're all equal. And that clearly is not the case, according to the evidence that you just spoken about. There's so much evidence, so many studies, and they all point to the fact that children who grow up with a married mother and father, who stay together, low conflict marriages obviously helps well, do better on every single measure you can think of in terms of low crime, better educational outcomes, better employment outcomes, better relationships when they grow up, less self-harm, less suicide, less depression. But this is absolutely obvious. But so what we have in our manifesto affirms that. We have a sentence in the section on traditional family values, and it says, no child should deliberately be brought up without its own mother and father. And as you said, there are times where tragedy happens, unfortunate circumstances happen. So you can't guarantee that. That's just life. But you shouldn't allow things that deliberately allow a child to be taken away.
So surrogacy, your party would be against surrogacy, where you hire a womb or you hire a sperm or some eggs or something from somebody else and concoct a baby.
Absolutely, because this is deliberately disturbing the natural order of things, and you're deliberately creating a baby to take it away from its own mother when it's born. It's not right, and it's against the natural order of things, and the outcomes for that child will, in general, be worse. I mean, that's guaranteed. So to do that is actually cruel. It's cruel to the child to deliberately create it so that it's going to be removed from one of its parents and grow out without one of its parents or both of its parents, because someone has paid for and bought a child. I mean, any healthy society would balk at this and just not do it. But the fact that it's allowed now and it's happening shows how far our society is degenerated, and we need to stop these kind of things from happening for the benefit of the children.
Now, I know, even if people disagree with some of what you're saying, that the fact that we live in a liberal democracy, the fact that what you're saying is supported by the evidence in terms of child well-being, should at least mean that you have a polite, respectful reception in a discussion, and you often don't get that. You seem to me to be somebody who's well put together. You're articulate. You seem in control, but it must get to you. It must be hard and it must be difficult. Tell us about how does it impact you and your family, the fact that you're treated so awfully?
The first time it happened was 2017, when I was actually standing for the leadership of the party I was in at the time. And there was a questionnaire about traditional values, and I answered some questions, and I said, I think marriage is a man and a woman. And I didn't believe that there was such a thing as a gay gene, and also that men couldn't become women, women couldn't become men. And this was found out by the LGBT group in the party and lots of the LGBT publications, and they went for me. They really piled on. It was so nasty, really, really vicious. These people tried to destroy me. They said I shouldn't be allowed to stand for leader of that party. I shouldn't be a London Assembly member. I shouldn't hold any position. I should be thrown out. Essentially, they really tried to destroy me. And it was horrible. I mean, I just wanted to go under my bed and hide. It was so nasty. When the first time this happens, when you state an opinion and it goes against the cultural Marxist norms that we have in the establishment, they really try to destroy you. But I got over that, and I'm so grateful to people in the party and around who did support me and who backed me up and stood up for me and said, no, no, he's right, and he has the freedom of speech to say what he wants. Even some people who didn't agree with me, they would stand up for my freedom of speech, which was wonderful. And it happened again and again, over the years. There's a video that's been seen a lot of times where there was a motion in the London Assembly calling for LGBT education in primary school, to teach kids that there were all different types of families, if you like, teach people about same-sex marriages and this and that. And I was the only person to oppose it. And when I did, the Labour person stood up and condemned me, said, this is disgusting, it's disgraceful, it has no place in here. I'm looking forward to you being kicked out of the Assembly. And all the other parties stood up and clapped her. And then the Conservative person stood up and condemned me, and they all stood up and clapped him. And then the Liberal Democrat and so on. So it was the only time when I've known all the parties ganged up on me and condemned me. And I was like 1 against 20 opposing this motion, because I didn't agree with children in primary schools being taught about this stuff, but now, the first time this happened was 7 years ago. So I've grown a thicker skin, I've got
Yeah,
used to it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
now I don't care,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah, yeah.
If
Well,
people
that
come at
comes
me, I
across.
don't care. I wear it as a badge of honor. But the
Yeah,
first time,
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
really hard.
yeah. Oh, good for you. But how does that? I mean, I suppose we need more people because the majority of people would agree with you, but we live in the kind of cancel culture where they're too afraid to speak their mind. And I have the privilege of having gone up and down the country, met thousands of our supporters, and a lot of them will say, teachers, we don't want to teach this stuff, but we're too afraid to say anything. We can't because we'll lose our jobs. Can parents speak up and say things? Because kids are being taught stuff they ought not be learning about at that kind of age. Because the pre-sexualization, they're learning all sorts of details and things. Kids, I often say, whoever that quote was, they're like wet cement. Whatever touches them leaves an impression. And so we need to be very careful what we teach our children. And the other side, if I can call it that, know that too, and so want them to almost have normalized sorts of things which aren't technically speaking normal, i.e. not what most people do and think. So we need more people with your opinion in politics. But what's your advice? I mean, considering what you've been through, how do we attract people to enter that kind of arena?
It's really difficult, and I understand this, because if you stick your head up and you go against the status quo, and the status quo is now degenerate, you're going to get fired at, you're going to get shot at if you stick your head above the parapet. But if you don't, your kids are going to get perverted and groomed into early sexualization and all kinds of other things which you really don't want to do. So, stand up for your kids, your own kids, your kids in your class, if you're a teacher. If you, Edmund Burke, the famous quote, all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Obviously, women as well today. But, what we're trying to do in politics with the Heritage Party is create a party that's going to stand up for these values, because we have these principles written in from the very beginning. Not many other parties do, not the ones that are in parliament. None of them are based on principles that are socially conservative, but we are. We have in our manifesto that we would implement a Hungarian style law to protect children from sexualization and LGBT propaganda in schools and in society. So we would make that law if we could get into parliament. So if you want someone to do this, to act in politics, I would say, please come and join us. As the more people that we have, you don't have to speak up if you're a Heritage Party member, but the mere fact of you joining us, it's £25 a year, it's not much, boosts our numbers. And then we can say, well, we're a party of so many people. The more members we have, the more powerful our statements will become, and also the more candidates we can stand, the more people we can support actually who do want to stand for parliament next time, or even stand in the local councils. So there's a way you can get involved, which doesn't cost a lot, and it doesn't need you to speak out. But I would encourage people to speak out. We need to get back to what's right and restore our nation, and that needs people to speak out and take a risk.
Great. And I like to kind of end kind of positively, where I was going to say, where are there some green shoots? What gives you hope in the morning, David? What kind of, I know your passion and the knowledge that it's a good thing that you're doing, and the fact that you've come through the battle and you're still there kind of keeps you going. But in terms of others and encouraging others, where are the green shoots? What do you think? What's out there worth grasping at?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say I am a Christian, so that gives me strength every day, praying and so on. And I know in the end, God wins. That's what's written in the Bible. But even now, you look at the trans agenda, and that's all related. There's the three agendas I mentioned: the abortion agenda, the trans agenda, the anti-traditional marriage agenda. You look at that, and they push that too far, too fast, and there is massive backlash against that now. Especially in America. And I think with that, we will win that battle. And then it swings back to standing up for traditional marriage. And I think there's more awareness that what you said earlier in the interview, that traditional marriage with a man and a woman who are married and stay together is better for children. And people are more and more focusing on the effects of this on children, what is best for children. And as that understanding grows, there is hope that even the MPs in Parliament will be compelled to do the right thing. If they're presented with evidence that this is the best thing for children, then that they cannot ignore that. And so there's a growing understanding of that, and that is a good thing.
That is a great thing. And let's face it, most of them, we often quote this stat that, 90% of the richest mums are married, only 20% of the poorest mums are married. So most of these policymakers, leaders of the zeitgeist, well, they know how good marriage is because they're married themselves and they're bringing up their kids within a married environment, so they know it. They're just too afraid to be honest and proselytize it to others. But you're right, marriage is invincible. Good families clearly will survive because they take care of themselves, they flourish. You look around, kids that have grown up in good families want good families themselves because it's clearly wonderful. It's clearly wonderful. So that is encouraging. You're encouraging. Phenomenal. I'm so grateful for the work you're doing. Keep it up. And I'd love to talk to you again sometime. But David Curtin, a real privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you.